Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. In this video, we are going to talk about the quickening event. Other Christians call it the rapture. It goes by different names, but it's essentially the belief that when Christ comes, the righteous are going to literally go up into the sky and join him. And in the Christian eschatological world, where you have mostly evangelicals that are trying to figure out the timing of the second coming and exactly what's going to happen. There's all sorts of theories about when this event takes place. They have a concept called the 7-year tribulation period. It is not a concept in our church. It's never been taught. Essentially, they take the Bible and they look at key scriptures and put them together and assume, oh, you take this 3.5-year period, you take that 3.5-year period, you put them together, and this is a 7-year tribulation. So is the rapture going to happen before the tribulation and all the righteous will be spared, whatever the tribulation is? Or is it going to be partway through? The first half is not as bad as the second half, and so it's a mid-trib tribulation. You're still going to have to go through some stuff, but you're not going to go through the worst of it. Or is it a post-trib where everybody, all this stuff? Now, I'm not a subscriber to this theory. We're going to talk about this in just a little bit. But we do, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, believe in a quote-unquote rapture. It's in the Bible. It's in Doctrine and Covenants. And more recently, we've had modern-day prophets and apostles talk about it. In fact, the main thing that I want to talk about in this video is this quote that I have from Elder Rasband. I was kind of shocked when he said this. So we're on my spreadsheet called Quotes A through Z. This is currently row 620 for translation, or in other words, quickening, being caught up, rapture, whatever, at the second coming. I have scriptures and quotes. So we're going to focus on this one. This was January 9th, 2022. Young adult English area devotional with Elder Rasband. Okay, so he says, "May Christ lift thee up, as it says at the close of the Book of Mormon, in that it will be a real experience in your life and will sustain you in your times of trouble." Now, before I continue, I probably should have pulled this up, but when you go to the close of the Book of Mormon and Moroni is giving his last farewell, he refers to this event, the second coming, the dead being resurrected and meeting Christ when he comes, and then the living, because the first resurrection and this quickening event, they take place at the same time. You click on the footnotes. If you want to go look it up, click or look up the footnotes, and it takes you to the scriptures that talk about this event. So he says to the young adults that may it be a real experience in your life and sustain you in your times of trouble. Now, I just said that I don't believe in this 7-year tribulation period thing like the evangelicals believe. I do believe that there's going to continue to be tribulation. I think we've had a lot of tribulation, especially at the beginning of the church, like as a church specifically. But if you want to think about the whole world going through tribulation, I think about Wilford Woodruff when he dedicated the Salt Lake Temple, and he said that the angels of destruction mentioned in the book of Revelation were released. They were released at the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple. And I think that just over time, as we've had world wars and a Cold War, and you have all these problems in the world, Israel and the whole saga of the state of Israel since its inception until now, there's been tribulation. And I think it's just going to continue. I don't think that there's a specific 7-year period. Excuse me. One reason that I don't, let's go to the book of Revelation, and then we'll continue on. I have more things to say about this quickening event and also the Millennium, because what is he talking about here that you would look at this experience as something that would sustain you in your times of trouble. Okay, so Revelation chapter 12. Okay, we're going to read what it says in the King James Version and then go to the Joseph Smith translation because there's a very important correction that's made. Okay, so the woman fled. This is the church. The symbolism here is the woman is the church. The child is the political kingdom of God. So you have the ecclesiastical and the political kingdom of God. The woman fled into the wilderness, aka the Great Apostasy, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. So you might say, well, Jared, it says days. Well, when you go to the Joseph Smith translation, it says, and the woman fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 years. And that's closer to the amount of time that the Great Apostasy took place. I think what's being referred to here when we're talking about the woman fleeing and having a place prepared, I think it has to do with priesthood keys. That yes, the priesthood keys were taken off the earth, but they were held by individuals until the time was right to come back and restore those keys. Also, you have the gold plates that were hidden. They were protected and hidden and prepared for a time when they would come forth in this last dispensation and be the primary tool of this last harvest, right? This whole thing that we're doing, it's the restoration. Within all these different splinter groups that are splintered off of our church, they all refer to themselves as the restoration because that's the main theme since the time of Joseph Smith with what we're doing. We're restoring the church. It's coming back. It's coming out of the wilderness. And it actually uses that verbiage in Doctrine and Covenants, coming out of the wilderness. In fact, I was hoping that there'd be a footnote here. Okay, so I know that there's lots of different 3.5 year periods throughout the scriptures, like in Daniel, the book of Revelation. You have, for example, 42 months. You have 1,260 days, 1,290 days, 1,335 days. And these are all like 3.5 year periods of time. Okay. Well, this one at least is not one of them because the Joseph Smith translation changed it from days to years. That's a big difference. Now, let's talk about in what way would this quickening event sustain you in your times of trouble? Because presumably, and it is a presumption because I have not been able to nail down the exact timing of exactly what happens. I don't know if the righteous get quickened and then we all meet at Adamondiaman, and then after that we go in the sky and then we come to the Jews and then appear to the world. I do have a quote here that says that the saints will be with Christ when he comes to the Jews. It says it in Zechariah. I also have another quote from a modern day apostle that says that. So I don't know if that's how it happens. For all I know, maybe we're going to be quickened at any moment for Adamondiaman, for the appearance of New Jerusalem, for going to the Jews. I have no idea. So that's the question. What is this going to sustain us through? Either way, it's associated with the second coming. If we get quickened and shortly after we're just in the millennium, you would think, oh, well, we're good now. We're good. Like, what is there to, why do we need to be sustained? So we're going to talk about that. I want to remind you, and I see this from time to time. I think some people don't understand that the millennium is not heaven. Your body will be changed and the dead will be resurrected, but it's not the end. The earth has not been celestialized. It is not yet heaven. It is a new phase in Earth's temporal existence. It's 7,000 years, but it's still probation. Let me just read this here. Um, I'm gonna skip down right here. So this is Bruce R. McConkie, the Millennial Messiah. During the Millennium, there will, of course, be two kinds of people on Earth. There will be those who are mortal and those who are immortal. Okay, so those that are mortal and those who are resurrected. There will be those who have been changed or quickened or transfigured or translated. Words fail to describe their state. And those who have gone through a second change in the twinkling of an eye so as to become eternal in nature. So let's break that down. That sounds kind of confusing. He's saying that there are those, us, more, I'm assuming that it's going to be you and me, hopefully, that we'll see the second coming and this will happen. Us, we will be changed / quickened / transfigured / translated, whatever word you want to use. Our bodies are going to be changed. And our bodies are going to be in a different state. And then there are those that are going to be resurrected. They're done. They're done with mortality. He continues, there will be those who are on probation. That's us. For whom earth life is a probationary estate, and who are thus working out their own salvation, and those who have already overcome the world and have entered into a fullness of eternal joy. So these are the two groups, mortal and immortal. So because you're still going to be in mortality and on probation in the millennium, there's still going to be trials and challenges and obstacles, and it's hard to like picture what that would be. Because a lot of things are going to get really good really fast when we get to the millennium, but there's still going to be trials. So maybe Elder Razband is referring to that. Just don't think that it's over when Christ comes. You're still going to have stress. You're still going to have to work. You're still going to have to eat. You're still going to have probably difficulties with family and friends. And it's not going to be like perfect. It's not the celestial kingdom yet. So I tend to think that that's what he means. But it's up to interpretation. Let's see. Did I want to move on to this next one yet? No. So look at this. Let's go back to this preceding paragraph. First, he's talking about people who are currently translated, like the three Nephites and John and who knows who else, how in their current state, they're not procreating because for all intents and purposes, their mortal life is over. They can't just keep having children for thousands of years. So they're done having their families. But they're in a translated state. Elder Bruce R. McConkie says, no longer does blood, the life-giving element of our present mortality, flow in their veins. Let's see. All translated beings undergo another change in their bodies when they gain full immortality, or in other words, when they're resurrected. Of course, they're not going to be translated forever. They too get to become resurrected. They just are under special circumstances in their fulfilling special missions. Okay. This change is the equivalent of a resurrection. All mortals after death are also resurrected. In the resurrected state, they are immortal and eternal in nature, and those among them who are privileged to live in the family unit have spirit children. Millennial man, so that's us. He's not talking about the three Nephites anymore, or John. He's talking about us, those that are in mortality, and that will be immortality in the millennium. Millennial man will live in a state akin to translation. His body will be changed so that it is no longer subject to disease, which that sounds really good, or death as we know it. Although he will be changed in the twinkling of an eye to full immortality when he is 100 years of age. He will, however, have children. So this is it seems like this is the big difference between the three Nephites and what our bodies are going to be like in the millennium. Since we are not going to be living for hundreds and thousands of years, we're still in the family phase. We're still having children. So that's why they don't have children. This is why we're going to continue to have children, but our bodies are still going to be the same. No more blood, which I'm excited about. I'm not going to cover the blood quotes. I have other quotes that clearly state from various people, us mortals are not going to have blood during the millennium, and neither are animals. That's one reason why there's not going to be any more eating of meat. And I know that's very sad. It's sad for me too. I have my favorite burgers. I like chicken. Everybody loves chicken. But everybody loves bacon as well. But that's going to come to an end. Okay, I have quotes for that. I'm not going to cover that here. Okay, so you think, okay, as far as like looking back to the quickening event after it happens and having that sustain you in the millennium, you look back and you think that was a really, really powerful spiritual experience, and that's going to give me strength as I finish out my life. Well, at least you're not going to have to worry about disease or death as we know it. It's interesting that he says, as we know it. Maybe he's referring to the new kind of death where you're changed in the twinkling of an eye. But I don't know if the as we know it refers to disease too. With disease, I have on my spreadsheet called quotes A through Z, currently row 370 for millennium, need for medicine, need for. I have just a few things here, but we're going to start with Zechariah. And he's referring to the millennium in this part of chapter 14. And men shall dwell in it, and there shall be no more utter destruction, but Jerusalem shall be safely inhabited. And this shall be the plague. Okay, so this is a disease, plague, it's a sickness. And this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord shall smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations, it's like after the burning, the terrestrials and celestials that remain, that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not, they have no rain. There shall be the plague. So like there's this punishment for not keeping the Feast of Tabernacles if you were among these nations that were fighting against Israel. And there's not much more that we know about that. Elder Orson Pratt talked about this in Journal of Discourses, volume 14, pages 351 and 352. I'm not going to read this. You can pause and read it, but he points this out in a discourse that there's going to be this plague. So at least in that sense, you will be able to get sick. Beyond that, because again, I'm thinking about what Elder Rasband said, being sustained through, I guess, difficult times, disease and sickness can cause difficulty in your life. It seems like in one way or another, it will be possible to get sick. We also have this very interesting quote from Bradley R. Wilcox. This is from a fireside. Brad Wilcox, 12 Tribes of Israel Breakdown, amazing talk. This is at approximately the 34-minute and 11-second mark. The YouTube channel is Live Music Therapy, published February 2nd, 2022. So he goes through, he talks about the tribes of Israel. It's a pretty incredible talk. But he talks about their role in the millennium. And he says, okay, so, right now, the tribes are doing what they're supposed to do. They have their different responsibilities and blessings and stuff, but things are going to change in the millennium. Like there's going to be an actual political structure to these tribes. So look at this. Now, when Jesus comes, he's going to govern the world. He's not going to be governed by a president or Congress or Senate or a parliament or a prime minister. He's going to govern the world. Well, if he's going to govern the world, then who's helping? Us. And that's where the tribes come in. In one instant, he will be able to say, if you are from Ephraim, thank you for your service and getting ready for this day. Now, I'd like you to be in charge of medical care. Yeah, but I'm not a doctor. You don't have to be, just get it organized. And if you are from Issachar, you're in charge of education. I'm not a teacher. You don't have to be, just get it organized. Now, what he says here is not necessarily doctrine. Like I don't think he's saying it in an authoritative way. Like, yeah, Ephraim is going to be in charge of medical. He's just giving an example, but I can't help but to wonder if that's a real example that's actually been talked about as church leadership has discussed the millennium. I think it's possible. I think about this new BYU medical school. This was something that was announced during President Nelson's presidency, and it was a big deal. And President Nelson had a vision about that school. I have the quote on my spreadsheets. Just look up BYU medical school on this spreadsheet. Because people will say, well, if the millennium is close, then why are we building a medical school? Like this really big project, it's really expensive. It must mean that the second coming is far away. I don't think so. I think there's still going to be a need for medicine. It may not be the same as now. You may be guaranteed to live until you're 100 years old, but maybe your body still degrades. Maybe it can still get sick, and yeah, you'll live to 100, but you're going to be in pain, or you're going to have a chronic illness or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. All I can do is show you what has been said. I think it's interesting here, now that President Oaks is president of the church, the next thing that he says is President Oaks calls the tribes the government of God. And we have to be ready to be called out at a moment's notice and to be able to be part of that additional organization. For there will not just be a capital in Jerusalem from which we will run the church, but there will be a capital in the Americas, in Missouri. From that capital, we will run the temple and world, and you'll be a part of that. You'll be a part of that. That's what you were born for. That's really cool. That's really cool. President Oaks calls the 12 tribes of Israel the government of God. And we have to be ready to be called out at a moment's notice. That's interesting. All right. Yeah, and I think that actually brings us to the end. I felt like, there were a couple more things. So going back to this whole thing with Elder Razban talking about the quickening being a real experience, and having it sustain you in your times of trouble. There's going to be trouble of sorts in the millennium. It may not be the trouble that we're familiar with. I don't know, maybe in some ways, maybe it'll be more difficult, which is kind of counterintuitive, but maybe, we'll be living at a higher level and more is going to be required. I don't know. Maybe there'll be more commandments. Maybe there'll be more difficult things to live by or something. You get it? In Millennial Messiah, Elder Bruce R. McConkie talks about doctrines in endless array of which we know nothing, that there's going to be lots of stuff revealed in the millennium. There's going to be new books of scripture that are going to come forth in some kind of way. So it reminds me of, I feel like I've had this experience a number of times, but whenever I've worked somewhere, the company or the military tries to get better over time, and they crack down on things. you get in, you're used to a certain way of working. You know what you can and can't do and the things that you can, get away with, so to speak. Not that I ever did anything bad, but the things that they're like, it's okay, you can do that. But then they start to crack down. And over time, the job gets more and more difficult until, once you're ready to quit or leave the army, you're just like, wow, I'm so glad that I don't have to deal with that, that I'm getting out right now. I had that experience with the army. They were transitioning from this old PT test. You have to take this PT test. It used to be 2-minute sit-ups, 2-minute push-up. Well, sorry, I think push-ups came first. 2-minute push-ups, 2-minute sit-ups, and then a 2-mile run. And then as I was getting out, they were changing it to this like strange, more complicated PT test that kind of looked hard, but I never took it. Thank goodness. I just got out. Thank goodness for my back. So in the Millennium, there might be some stressful things as we change and adapt and learn new truths potentially. And then I just want to point out, I've heard some members of the church like doubt that there's going to be a quickening event / rapture. It's the same thing. We're talking about the same thing. Here's the scriptures that talk about it. Starting in Zechariah, he talks about all the saints right here, Christ coming to the Jews and all the saints with thee. We have it in 1 Thessalonians, and here it's really clear. Then we, which are alive and remain, shall be caught up together with them in the clouds. This wording kind of makes it seem like if you remain, then that means that you survive the burning of the wicked. This could be a clue. I don't know. We have Moroni. Oh yeah, okay. So here's the scripture that we were talking about earlier. Here's Moroni, the Elder Razban was referring to. Doctrine and Covenants 45, Doctrine and Covenants 78, Doctrine and Covenants 88. And then we have Orson Pratt, Elder Neil L. Anderson, who said, he talks about it here, being caught up to meet Christ in the clouds. And then he says, may we prepare for his coming by rehearsing these glorious events over and over in our minds. He says that we should rehearse this in our minds, the quickening. This was the April 2015 General Conference. Elder Anderson again, Elder Razban, Elder Bednar, he included a bunch of scriptures in this Leahona article, July 2022. Elder Anderson again, and then on the church website. So yes, we do believe it. One last thing, this is the only place that I've seen anybody in authority in the church say this. Let's see. Sorry, I thought this would be easy to find. Basically, Elder Orson Pratt says, right here, the mortal saints will then be transfigured and sanctified, but not immortalized. And there's a part here where he says that the wicked will have to witness it. Oh, I think this is it right here. About the same time that the Latter-day Saints are quickened, not immortalized, or in other words, not resurrected, there will be saints that have slumbered and slept for ages, and they are to be quickened and taken up into the heavens. Now the wicked are to see all these things. So according to him, like this would happen first before the burning. The wicked, I guess, would be left behind. And this is kind of the classical view among evangelicals and other Christians. It seems like he has that same understanding that, there's going to be some amount of time that passes between being quickened and the wicked being destroyed. Although, like I said, if we look back at 1 Thessalonians, it says, then, we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together. So I don't know. Orson Pratt's the only one that's like really put a time to when that happens that I know of. If you have additional information, feel free to send it my way. But that's all that I really know. I'm just content just to potentially be quickened at quickened at any minute. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't, because I think that's how Adamantium could happen. If we all physically have to be there, I feel like that's how it would have to happen. We'd have to be like transported, caught up, supernaturally taken over there if we're all physically going to be there. Otherwise, I don't know. Maybe it'll happen at the other appearances. Who knows? But that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.